hearing too. So that's right.
Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's January 9th, 2020, our first meeting in 2020. I'm feeling the love today with all these people here. It's rare that we have so many. So the first item of business is citizens' comments, and I believe we have some, Mr. Clark.
I just want to follow up on some questions that you asked, Madam Chairwoman, and citizens have asked very quickly. The Water Resource Committee will be meeting on the 22nd of this month.
What day of the week is that, Mr. Clark?
That's a Wednesday morning.
Okay.
At 8 o'clock in the morning. It's posted.
Sure it
We'll
is.
be going over the water quality test results that we now have in hand. We'll be reviewing. There are several of the wells that we want to look at further because of the results. We have a draft table of contents. We're going to be working on the report. We intend to have it available in draft form in several months and well in advance of town meeting. On the PFOA, the issue of the never-ending chemical that's come up for discussion. As you know, on the 20th of December, the Commonwealth issued a set of it's not draft, but a set of regulations with, at the moment, no enforcement. They've specifically published this. There's been confusion, unfortunately, in the Dover patch. If you're a viewer of the Dover patch, ignore anything they said, because this is a statewide matter. It's not regulated at the town, and all of the public water supply companies they listed, except for the Dover Water Department, are handled by the state. The municipal vulnerability preparedness, we're going to get a draft this week. I was dealing with the MAPC this week, and we'll be proceeding on that. This week, unfortunately, you'll pardon me, but I've been in meetings everywhere throughout the state all this week. There was a lengthy meeting with Katie Brown, who heads up at the DEP, anything to do with animal or other type of infection. She was active as the leader in the EEE issue last year, and that was the predominant discussion at the meeting. I've lost track of which day it was, but both Department of Agriculture and Department of Environmental Protection and a very select group of health individuals from regions, mosquito control, a few local boards. We were asked to participate. We had a very lengthy discussion about how to address this year, the primary issue being improving nomenclature so it's clear what it means when the state issues a statement about the level of concern, moderate versus severe and the like, get that refined, and to be much faster at getting the word out and much more clear about the prevention methods. And a great deal of the discussion also went to, and Dover is very concerned about this, the issue of the aerial spraying, because we do have a farm that is now a certified organic, and it would be problematic if they were sprayed. We have beekeepers, so that was under discussion. Another day was spent with NOAA, and I'm going to ask you to consider in the next month or so applying for funding from either NOAA or the state so as to install a complete certified weather station here in Dover, because we spent a whole day going through the new tools, the metrics that NOAA is making available to government officials on history and current of precipitation, snow depths, temperatures, ranges, anything you can think of. What is essentially very much of concern is that the recognition is that the types of problems that we see, for instance, drought, are very localized. We've had these extreme precipitation events, but they're extremely localized. And I had a map that I provided to NOAA, which actually jostled some people's memories because they hadn't thought much about it until we walked it through. Something has changed in the last 5 years, and storms that traditionally would be westerly coming across the state to the east As they do it, if you watch these storms, you'll see that somewhere around Westboro, instead of coming right over Dover, they split. And historically, for the last 5 years, we're getting storms that bypass us to the north and to the south, and we're not getting the same level of precipitation anymore. The problem with the reporting is our closest stations are Norwood to the east and Norton to the south. There are a range of other stations listed. The problem is they're there only because they have historical data, like in the 1850s or 1920s. They are not active. There are no active reporting stations anywhere around us, and certainly not to the west. So that's an issue. One last thing that's come up today, we're discussing tomorrow with the superintendent of schools the issue of vaccinations and communications. And I circulated, I believe I copied you, a very critical article on the issue of vaccinations, what it costs if you don't, what it costs if you do, and it's a dramatic difference in terms of risk levels. But of course, today we now know we have a measles infection that's been roaming Logan Airport and Northeastern University. So it's something that's now local. That's about all I had to say. I promised you it would be in about 3 to 4 minutes. If you have any questions.
So, Mr. Clark, thank you very much for the update, very informative. I think the big takeaway is that there is a water committee meeting on the 22nd of January, and if citizens want to attend, you will be discussing...
It's an open meeting.
Right, you will be discussing the preliminary results of the base testing that was
Correct.
done late fall, maybe early winter. Also, I would like to compliment you. I got a lot of positive feedback on the Board of Health meeting on Monday night, and I believe that, you know, you were able to reach a decent path forward with the citizens.
I think we probably were able to, you should pardon it, corral in most of the horse owners. But yesterday I was with the Department of Agriculture, the Deputy Commissioner, and the state wants us to be truthful in our filings, right. And we have to be careful to be truthful in terms of, because again, they're looking more and more for early reporting to show incidents of disease, and if a horse goes down, that's an indication that there was a mosquito that should have been found. Yep. Seriously. Yep. And this past year, some of the reports were very late coming out.
Right. So I think, you know, it's good to be proactive, and it's good to include the community, and I think that meeting on Monday night was a productive meeting between the Board of Health and the community at large. So we appreciate, I know it was a lot of work on your part preparing for that meeting, so thank you. And I think, you know, with respect to NOAA, it would be interesting that maybe we could put you on the agenda so that you have a little more time and we can talk about
I would love to walk you through what we can now find out in the general area. Good. Or specific cities where there's reporting and show you what we're lacking. Right,
so I think it's worthy of an agenda item, so thank you. And thank you for taking only 5 minutes. I appreciate that because we do have a full agenda.
I will say one thing you mentioned just now on horses. We tried to make very clear, because the horse owners were concerned about it, it may be called Eastern equine encephalitis, but that's because in the 1850s it was the horse that was first diagnosed as having the disease. The poor horse is at the end of the line. Literally.
Well, that's a good fun fact. It's probably show up in some trivia.
Thanks, Jerry.
So thank you very much. Appreciate it. So that was a lot of information to absorb in 5 minutes, right?
That took 13.
Maybe we should need that NOAA station.
Right. So the next item of business is for us to welcome our new Assistant Town Administrator, Caitlin O'Brien, who goes by Kate, I believe.
Yes.
So, Kate, you said it was a fun-filled first week.
It's been yes, it's been a great week. Thank you to everyone. It's been so welcoming. And I'm just looking forward to working with everyone.
Well, we're looking forward. We're very happy to have you here, and we're looking forward to getting to know you a little better. You know, we're excited about all these projects that Chris and his team have been embarking upon. And so I know they've been running a little short-handed for
About a year.
a bunch of months. I think Mona can now take lunch, I believe, so I heard.
Okay, just keep an eye on Mona.
Let her take them.
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you, and we look forward to working with you. And now, where are all our little guests?
Right there, standing by.
Okay. Right.
Forget it.
They were so cute.
They're coming back.
Couldn't help put a
Yeah,
smile on our
but they're
face
probably
there.
too young to a point, aren't they?
We have a meltdown time, so we.
That's okay.
That's what I was talking
Have
about
you
the-
seen us sometimes?
Meltdown happens in about an hour here, so.
Right. So this is the fun part of the meeting. But Chief McGowan, you've done this before.
Yes.
You
So
are
if you
going to
guys
make a
just-
recommendation and introduce
Yes,
two new
please.
offices?
Sure.
Okay.
I appreciate the spot on the agenda. I see what a busy night we're having. The Dover Police Department has 16 full-time officers, including myself, and we can't do the work that we do without our group of part-timers that we have. Currently, we have 3, and I'm here to
And
ask
2
the
in
board-
training back
Two in
there?
training. And I'm here to ask the board, make a recommendation to the board to hire 2 more reserve officers. Reserve
Okay.
officers work 1 weekend shift a month and then fill in wherever they can as needed. And we take all of our full-time officers from the ranks of the part-time officers. So it's kind of a test drive for everybody to make sure it's a good fit. So the 2 I have before the board tonight, to my far left and your right is Edward McGuire. He currently works as a patrol officer for the Framingham State University Police Department. He's been there about 7 years. He put himself through the police academy back in 2010. And he's looking to expand his police career and hopefully get on with the municipality and continue. Immediately next to me here is James Baugus. James comes to us with about 6 years of experience with the Simmons College or University?
I think it's university.
University.
Right.
Simmons University.
Used to be
College.
college.
Yeah, it used to be college.
Right.
So, he worked for them for about 6 years, had a career change with some family obligations, and he currently works now at a police supply company where he deals with most of my guys on a weekly basis. So,
So you know everyone?
yes, exactly. So during the interview process, it was obvious that both these candidates rose to the top immediately, and luckily I have room for 2, and I'm asking the board to appoint both of them tonight.
Okay. Well, as we always say, the process that we've been following has been great for your department. It's really a win-win for everybody. It's,
Agreed.
does it fit for us and does it fit for them?
Correct.
Right, which is so important, and it's rare that you have the opportunity to have a test drive before. So unless there, would either of you like to comment, but I'd like to move.
No, I mean, I
Okay.
think that's a pretty straightforward presentation.
Right.
Well done.
So then I'm going to move to approve the appointment of Edward McGuire and James Baugus as special police officers for the Dover Police Department.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Whose family is back there?
Officer McGuire. So
Would
before
you
you
like to
leave, could you
introduce them?
at least got to get your kids on camera?
Right. It's the spotlight.
It's a spotlight, yeah. Just a quick introduction.
This is my oldest. What's
So
your
can we shake your hand?
Gotta shake the.
Or the little hair? Hey, Sean.
Hey.
Hey, Sean.
Who's that?
Who's this?
Well done.
Very
Excellent,
cute.
excellent.
Oh, and he has a badge.
Yes.
Very nice.
This is Sean, he's 3.5, and this is Owen, he just turned 7 months.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's it, 2 and through, so.
All right.
And not to be outdone, James' son,
So,
is at home. His meltdown is 30 minutes prior.
he was not getting a vehicle.
Good call on your part, James.
Well done.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
If you like, we
Welcome.
can give you an opportunity to leave before we go on to the
Perfect,
next
that'd
one.
be great. Make some room.
Okay. Oh,
Hey, Babu.
you don't want to leave him here.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd ask if you could take the
senior tax relief program presentation out of order, and flip that with the solar energy, so senior tax relief now and then the energy presentation.
Certainly, certainly I can do that, all right? So Janet and Amy, do you want to come up here? Okay.
I don't know how to do it.
Those are the goals. Is that where the tax relief is?
He said he set it all up.
Hey, Carl, could you just go outside and ask Chris to step in? That's the meeting of goals. yeah.
Right, those are the goals. You know, I think I know it was one of the goals. Is it in the goals, Chris?
Excuse me, I'll take it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chris.
Rick, do you want the overhead lights?
So, good evening, and we have Janet and Amy. So Janet Claypool is the Director of Council on Aging, and Amy is the Town Assessor. And I believe you guys, the two of you will be presenting a tax relief program for seniors?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
So thank you for inviting us to present to the meeting tonight. The Council on Aging Board of Directors and the Board of Assessors recognize that tax relief is a priority for many seniors in our community. We appreciate that the selectmen have prioritized senior tax relief as one of your fiscal year 20 goals. Through our interactions at the COA and the Assessor's Office, we find that not all seniors are aware of the existing tax relief programs in our town. So starting next Monday, the Council on Aging will start hosting monthly office hours with our assessor, Amy Gao, and she will come in so seniors can have an opportunity to meet with her, ask questions, and learn about some of the new programs and existing programs. There's a flyer about that, I believe, in your packet. Tonight, we want to highlight some of the current senior tax relief options that are offered by the town and share with you additional tax relief programs to consider. So in working with the town administrator, it seemed the best way to make this information more accessible for citizens was to create a one-page sheet that lists current programs with eligibility requirements. This information will be posted on the town website on both the Council on Aging and Assessors web pages and be available at town offices. Amy and I can walk through some of the programs that are administered by the COA and the assessors on the Senior Tax Relief Program sheet. Amy?
So right now, we offer the exemption for persons over 65, and that's income-based and asset-based.
Microphone?
Oh,
Make sure Rick can hear.
okay.
There you go, thank you.
Yep. We also have the Clause 17D, which is for persons over 70, and it has an asset requirement but doesn't have the income requirement. We also have a senior tax deferral, where the seniors can defer all or a portion of their taxes, and that is income-based. And each of these, the seniors would apply each year. And take it from there. We've had these programs for many, many years. We're just trying to get the information out so that people are aware of what we have currently.
So Nan, you said we were going to have this information available on the town website, at the town offices. So I assume the town offices would be like here in the townhouse and also Council on Aging?
Correct, correct.
Because, you know, I'm not sure, that every senior would be looking to the website to get this information.
Right.
So I want to make sure that it's accessible to them.
What we're trying to develop was a one-page sheet, so this would end up being a double-sided sheet that we would have available at our
Okay.
departments. We'll probably make sure the selectman's office has a copy of that, and the
Okay.
town clerk. And then, as people come in, we can refer them back to the appropriate department who would walk them through how to use that program.
Right, because that's always the challenge that we face.
Right.
You know, how do people get their information?
Right.
And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have the coffees and the
Right,
office
I like
hours
that.
with the
Right,
assessor.
right.
And we've tried to promote that through, throughout the town in a newsletter. It's on the front page of the website now. But just to get the word out so people realize we want to be able to talk with you about these programs and help you learn about them.
And I would also imagine that if any senior wanted to reach out to you directly, if they couldn't make these, that
Absolutely.
you're available and they should
I'm
come
here
to the
every
town
day.
hall. Right, right. So Amy's
No
here
appointment
every day
needed,
and if
just
you
come in.
Right, okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
And we
And
tr-
Amy, in the example that you gave on the first page, just to give viewers and some of our residents an idea, the exempt amount of $1,000,
Up to $1,000.
up to $1,000,
Right.
right? And typically, right, if you took the average tax bill, it's about 10% of the average Dover tax bill.
Right.
Right.
So it's a significant amount of money relative
Absolutely.
to what an individual household's tax bill will be. So that's the part that jumps off the page at me. I would imagine that that's how just as Madam Chair reiterated to, how do you, we want to get that out. We want
Right.
to make that known.
Right.
That's
And
significant.
This is the first meeting, we're going to have the office hours, we'll put it on the website, I'm always here.
Right, which I think is, and, I know that, you know that, but we want to make sure that everybody knows
Right.
that. And not only are you always here, but you are available to talk to people.
Right.
Right.
And our office hours start next Monday
Next
at 10
Monday.
a.m.
Right.
Come by the COA, Carroll Community Center, room 108. Amy
Right.
will be there, as
Right.
I will be, to talk with you.
But you know how it goes. People will say, well, I didn't know that.
Right.
That's
So-
right. Well, that's why we're having them not just 1 month, we're
Right.
having them the following months as well.
Right.
Yeah.
The other piece that we have on this sheet to talk about for tax exemption programs would be the Senior Property Tax Work-Off Program that the Council on Aging administers. And that is one where senior citizens can provide services to the town in exchange for a reduction to their property tax. They have to be 60 or older. The skills and ability must match what the department needs are, but the maximum credit they can achieve is $1,500 per household. So again, John, as you were pointing out, it becomes a
15%,
significant
right.
issue
Yeah.
on their taxes. The piece that we wanted to also share as an existing program is the Senior Circuit Breaker Tax Credit, which is managed through the Commonwealth. And that's something that they can access through their state income tax credit.
Right.
And we listed the direct link here as well as a phone number if they need more information to learn about that.
So that's off their income taxes.
Right, right. So that's where we
Thank you.
talked about existing programs, but we also wanted to share with you some of the additional tax relief programs that we thought would be some 4 different options for you to consider. So Amy, you want to talk about
Yep.
the first one?
So the first one is the property tax deferral interest rate. Currently, the rate is 8%, and we have heard that in the surrounding towns may be a little bit lower. So the Board of Assessors are meeting at the end of the month. They're going to have a discussion if they should reduce the rate, and if they do, to what. And we're asking to have a place for a warrant article
Okay.
at town meeting if they choose to
Reduce
to
them.
lower that.
So would you consider a floating rate tied to an index, or you simply go with a fixed rate, lower the rate from 8
That's
to...
something that they would, they'll talk about at
That's a
the
good
meeting.
idea.
Mm.
I'm an ex-banker.
Yeah. So that's one of the options that we're looking towards. The other one is on the exemption, the first exemption on the brochure, where the seniors have an exempt amount up to $1,000. We're looking to have a discussion, maybe we could increase that.
Yeah. So when was the $1,000 set? Do Do you know?
I don't know, I believe it was in the 80s.
Whoa.
I'm not sure, though. I was looking to try and find out when
Yeah.
it was, because it's 500 and the town has already adopted 1,000. So now we're looking to increase that again. So the board is going to meet, depending on their decisions at that meeting. They'll put a placeholder on the warrant and maybe bring it to town meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, chapter 73 of the Acts of 86, right? If that
Yeah,
was
so-
the $1,000 implemented at that
Could
time,
you do a quick
you do a quick calculation
on
and
the
figure it would be
CPI?
close to
See,
about $6,000.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
If you just kept it,
My math skills
Adjusted
are
for
way better than
inflation.
this. Way better. He gets way more credit than I do.
so it's because I'm better looking.
Thank you. That's
Another
significant.
option we want to look at is called a voluntary check-the-box donation, which establishes a town elderly and disabled taxation fund which would defray property tax. This currently is a program that's offered in a lot of Massachusetts towns, even some of the surrounding towns of Westwood and Natick, Needham, Walpole. There's quite a few different towns that offer this.
And how effective is it? How much money do they raise? Do you know?
We're looking into this now, so
So it's
it's
just
really in
starting up,
infancy,
okay.
yeah.
Right. The town can designate a place on the municipal or excise tax bills or mail a separate tax form separate form with their tax bills, and the taxpayers can voluntarily
check
check off and say, we want to donate to defray the costs for other people. And then a committee is formed. I think it's with the chair of the Board of Assessors, the treasurer, and other citizens that are appointed to help review those applicants and then to award funds to them. The other option we looked at was a means-tested senior citizen property exemption. This was a pilot model that was started through the town of Sudbury, but is also offered through other towns in the state and replicated. It's been replicated there. It reduces property taxes for certain low to moderate income seniors, and it redistributes the property tax burden amongst others in the residential class. There's different criteria for people to meet of age, income, ownership, residency, and assessed value requirements. The person applying has to be 65 years of age and older. If they have somebody living with them or as a co-owner, they have to be 60 years in age and older. In Sudbury, the minimum requirement is you have to have been a resident there for 10 years. So this is one of the things that in Sudbury they found to be a successful program. There is a residential tax rate increase with the implementation of this program. So that's something for the community to be aware of when they look at that. Do you have any questions about some of these?
These are all, this is exactly what we were trying to do with this goal, is to have us think about, what are some of the things we can do, because we've certainly heard that there is a tax burden to certain seniors in this town to live here. And so I really commend all of you, and Chris, you too, for working with the assessor and Council on Aging to come up with these ideas. And I'm sure as we look into these, we may even find other things. Maybe people will be looking at Dover's example of something good in the future. So thank you, and we really appreciate the update. Are there any questions?
No, I think that it starts with awareness.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember talking to Carl Valenti about this during 2019, and what you've done is really the first step. And it's an important step.
It is.
So then you work through the issues,
Right.
and hopefully we can come up with a creative program, a way to help people who are in need of help. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I think not only awareness, it's also accessibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, everybody knows there's a town assessor, right?
Right.
But nobody, right, but it's nice to be able to put a face to it, and then maybe if they do know who you are, then, people will feel more comfortable to come and talk to you about their own personal situation.
And of course, how nice you are,
Of
and
course.
all the
What
things
about
that
that
go
big
along.
stick that you had?
That's you, Bob.
Oh, that's me, right. Specifically for you.
And I think there is, we're partnering on this, so we're a team, we're doing it
Right.
together.
Right.
So
Right.
we want people to access the programs.
It's a unit of conversation that's come up every year in the past 4 years with the free cash conversation and how that, our tax base is skewed and of course the whole idea that we've covered in the Council on Aging is aging in place and making Dover giving people the opportunity to make it a place where they can stay for as long as they want,
Right.
and that allowing a resident to have a lot more control over their future in the town. So, thank you.
I apologize, I probably should have asked this before, but do we have any idea of what percentage of homes or families will be affected by this? It seemed to me when we looked at the meeting recently that it's a pretty high standard that you have to meet. for
Mostly on the
income and
asset side.
assets.
On the asset side, the
Yeah.
asset side is pretty low, and so a lot of people in Dover would.
Right, it's not.
Right.
And those numbers come from the state. That's-
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's all part of
Understate,
the,
right, because it just struck me in reading it, and that there's a very low percentage that could possibly be able to apply for this.
Well, that's why, as we had said, this is a start.
Yeah.
It's the first start, it's us becoming aware, trying to,
To get around that, we'll do check the box and.
Right.
We'll try and come up with something.
and we have, there are other communities that are similar to Dover.
Of course.
And so reaching out and finding out if they've created programs that reflect the reality of the town, that would be sort of step 2 or 3. Because I caught the same thing.
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
that's always been a hurdle.
It has been, because
has.
you
We don't have
property
balanced
values
population.
are
Right.
high, and they're very high. The parts that we all want are high property values with low property taxes.
Now,
So,
your home is not included, your residence is not included in the assets.
but so that's why Sudbury's program is quite creative. I'm sure they went through a similar analysis to what we're going through now.
Right.
To first make people aware, and then to try and determine, well,
Yeah,
what
that's right,
percentage
balance.
of the people would this really benefit? And then trying to craft something where maybe you could capture another pocket of the population, because now you're aware of what that pocket is.
Right.
That could really use
Right.
a little more relief.
Yeah, specific to the town.
Right.
And I
That's
think what
really-
we saw in the
Right.
Sudbury program with the information that they shared was over the past 5 years, at least 100 people a year have accessed and used the means-tested exemption program.
Okay.
And then if you look at the property tax work-off program that exists now in the town of Dover, there's no income eligibility for that.
Right.
So
Just hours.
Just they
worked.
put the hours of work.
And
in.
skills.
And
Well, no,
skills,
yeah,
yeah.
Janet
But
mentioned
we
that.
have, the town has allocated 10 slots for that,
Okay,
and currently 8 are filled.
okay. So thank you.
thank you
You're welcome.
very much.
It's great to see departments working together.
Exactly. So we're going to go back in order.
Yep.
So then, so
So
back to
we go back to
1.3.
the-
So they're outside?
They are
They're coming
outside.
in? Okay.
We will call them in.
Right, but you have to figure out, and the first step is reaching out to people and figuring out who we know this many qualifies, so now who could really use some additional funding.
Single digits.
You guys can get started if you want to.
Okay. So, good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting this evening. We appreciate you coming and making a presentation. I just noticed with the setup, so when you do start with your slide presentation, unfortunately, you may want to lean back a little bit because otherwise the shadow of your head. Right. And it blinds you. So
Then just move the microphone.
so move the microphone, right.
So that people
Right.
will be able to hear
The
it.
table weighs about 700 pounds, so if you actually try to drive. You want to move it?
So,
The heaviest piece
Gino,
of
would you
furniture.
like to make an introduction and then have them do a
Yes.
presentation? Thank you.
Yes,
And could you introduce yourself, just in case people don't know who you are?
okay, I'm Gino Colucci, town planner.
Right.
I guess, actually, Carl Warnick and I were talking one day about green communities. This is not a green communities project
Right.
per se. And we were wondering about where might be a good fit for a solar project. And noting that the highway garage was in the middle of a large open area with, very great sun exposure. And I was familiar with an organization called Power Options, which is a nonprofit organization that only serves municipalities and other nonprofits. And so they've gone through a procurement process. They do a number of things besides solar projects. They do electrical aggregation, which is something you might want to consider at some point. And they have some natural gas projects. But anyway, so they, I guess about 4 years ago, selected Select to be their vendor for providing solar projects. And they had done a project in Sherburne, so I was familiar with them. They actually was on the Sherburne Highway Garage.
Okay.
And that project produces about twice as much electricity as the garage uses, so the other half is credited to other buildings.
Right.
And they'll tell you, but they've done a number of projects in municipalities
Okay.
all over the state. And so we've had, with Chris, Carl and I, and Craig Hughes, we've had 2 or 3 conversations with them so far, and it looked like a very promising project. They'll go through the details, but the way it works generally is, usually it's best to, when you're the owner of the solar panels, but because of the tax credits, but the town's not eligible for the tax credits, they are, so they can provide a very good rate to the town. So they, what else? So it requires a, well, I'm trying not to go into the details that they're going to go into.
Well, we can let them go and then you can fill in the
I think I
blanks.
should just turn it over to them
Right.
at this point.
So I do have one question before we begin. Was the catalyst for looking into this, were we in the process of replacing the highway garage roof?
No,
Okay.
no, it's
So-
a metal roof.
Okay.
And it's in good shape,
Okay,
and the structural integrity will be, for all appearances, it seems fine, but they will have a structural engineer verify that
Okay.
before anything were to be done.
okay, all right.
Okay,
Right.
so this is Steve Claremont and Matt Shortsleeve from Select, and I'll turn it over to them.
Yeah, and just first of all, I just thank you so much for your time tonight. I've been working with Gino and Carl and Craig since I think it was back in August.
Okay.
And really kind of doing an assessment, looking at the building, going through some of your electric bills, capturing the history, and trying to figure out what the system would produce, what it would offset. So as Gino mentioned, I think it's an ideal candidate. It's got a standing raised seam up there, roof appears to be in good structural integrity. And originally I looked at it and said, oh, if we just did this part, oh, we'd get the whole garage covered. But you're
Right.
underutilizing an asset there with the other portion of the roof. And when we started going through doing different designs, it really could cover quite a bit, which I'll touch on.
Okay.
So I'm really the business director of business development, working with you. Matt Shortsleeve heads up, he's our vice president, heads up all our development across the company. So I just wanted to take a moment to introduce Matt and a little bit of history here. So if I look at...
And who's Stephen?
Yeah, and I'm
you're
Stephen. I'm Stephen, yes. And I know it's a little bit wordy, but bear with me. First really is that we were, again, looking at the highway department rooftop building, the garage, the rooftop, how we could leverage that for your benefit. We are going through Power Options. Power Options is a nonprofit consortium that buys power. It was originally part of the state and it got spun out. There are over 400 members within the Power Options community. We were selected, I don't know that now, 4 years ago to be their provider for solar rooftop systems. The one in Sherborne was one of my projects personally, but we've done a lot of different projects around the area. They do provide a standard contract. You don't have to go through an RFP process with them. It's standard terms, standard pricing. What I love about their particular offering here is that there's a 0% fixed escalation rate. If you know about PPAs, there's usually an escalator. So I always think back to when I was a kid in school about the old Benjamin Franklin, you want this or do you want this to compound? And boy, does it really
That
pay.
was the pennies.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just I'll go way back. So yeah, it's just amazing what you can save. So I think that's a real key with this program. So again, there's no cost to the city, no a capital cost or ongoing maintenance, because we would be building it. We're a turnkey provider. And there also is the benefit of a pilot with this. It comes out to about $3,300, as you'll see up there. Sorry, I'm kind of leaning in here. And talking with the people that we worked with within your community, they were supporting the system. So that's just really a high-level summary slide. The other wordy slide of the whole deck, sorry about that again, it really goes down to the details, and the first bullet just kind of encapsulates that we are a turnkey provider. So we'll build it, we do all the engineering, the procurement, the installation, but I think more importantly, the ongoing support. You don't want someone to come in and build something and then disappear on you. So, and we're based right in Hopkinton, so we're very, very close by. We have a full service organization. We actually have a network operations center that will be monitoring all the systems. So we'll be monitoring your system and seeing how it produces. And if there should be a problem, we'll have a truck come out. We have like 9 or 10 different trucks. So again, the thing underneath the whole agreement would be that you would get into a power purchase agreement. It's a 20-year contract where you'd be buying at a certain rate, but it's fixed, 0% escalation rate. And then when I looked at the system size that we were able to put on the highway department garage, it produces approximately 280,000 kilowatt hours. Up there, I think it's 281,363. And then you looked at your 7 electricity bills for the town. I think it was the highway department, town library, transfer station, town hall, police and fire department. Whiting Road was one. I don't know. I'm not sure what that was. And then the Carlisle Center. Carroll. Sorry, Carroll.
Yeah.
And basically, this system will produce 59% of what they're currently consuming. So what you would be doing is supplanting what you're buying from Eversource and getting it from the solar system. So really nice savings on that. The key thing, though, that everyone needs to kind of keep in mind is that for providers like us to be able to offer good rates, there's 2 incentives that we try to capture. One is the federal investment tax credit, which now is dipped from 30 down to 26% this year. The other one is on the state incentive program. It's called the SMART program. And what they do is they took a certain size, 1,600 megawatts, and divided it into 8 blocks, 200 megawatts each. And then each utility has a certain quota in there, but as their quota fills up, it segues to the next block. As it happens, the incentive drops 4%. So there's really onus to try to, if you want to get the best rate, to try to go sooner than later. If you're familiar with these type of things, you have to file an application with the utility company called an interconnect application. And they take time to go through and say, okay, you can build, or there's an issue, or whatever. that's kind of like what you want to kind of get going soon, and we can do that for you. The other nice thing, which I'm not sure you're aware of, is that in the state, there's also a concept called net metering, which means that if you overproduce, you can direct the credits to other places. Well, National Grid has been full for a long time. Eversource is still open, and public utilities it's open for. So, again, pointing back to the ideal situation that the garage will overproduce, you can get 100% credit for that overproduction. Private individuals, in Eversource, I think there's still a little bit left, it's 60%. They take a 40% haircut, so you're getting it at 100%. I was really excited about that. And then, of course, we also offer buyout options in the contract, because it is a 20-year contract, so at certain years, if you decided you wanted to own the system, there's a thing that you could actually own the system. So we're very, very open and flexible on things. I wanted to give you a little summary on this would be if the system qualified underneath block 3. Remember, there's 8 blocks in the SMART program. And you can see that the PPA rate up there, it's 0.099 cents per kilowatt hour, which roughly translates into a savings of almost $17,000 in year 1. And over the 20 years, it's $452,000, which is a great savings, where there's no investment on your side. But if you look and say, okay, what happens if I miss that block? Now you're in block 4. You can see that the savings goes down to $14,000 and then $398,000 because the PPA rate had to go up because of the incentive was lower. So it's like squeezing a water balloon, if you want to think of it that way.
And what would you get if you were in block 1?
Oh, it's not. We're already in block 3. Yeah,
I
I know.
know
I know you
that.
wish.
I know
wish.
that.
I didn't do the analysis, but you probably think it's like a penny. It almost drops like a penny,
Okay.
changes a penny.
Each block?
Yeah,
is about
approximately. We have to do the modeling, but it's about that.
And
then
the
if
blocks start anew each fiscal year?
No.
Oh,
Actually,
used up.
National Grid and Unitil are all full. They were full almost from pretty much the get-go. Yeah, it was amazing. There's going to be a version 2 of the program, but they're starting at lower blocks. It's still, Eversource is still a rich area for them because, you almost have to stop and think about the first 2 programs. The state and center programs. A lot of the systems went to ground mount systems, and they're really in central and western Massachusetts. So they filled up very, very quickly. And even underneath the SMART program, they filled up very quickly. But here in Eversource, or the old Instar region, we're not so much horizontal. Our stuff is more vertical, if you know what I mean, the building. So it's not filling up as fast as the other guys, which plays to your advantage.
Right.
But again, there still is, as it fills up, it does segue. So I just kind of caution, I want to show you the difference so you understand the impact visually rather than just someone saying something.
Is there a way where if we funded the construction and the start of it, could we get a better rate and a better deal on the long-term purchase? So if we put the capital up rather than you?
Oh, I'll leave that to you, Matt.
We'd be happy to have you buy a system. You'd need to conduct a procurement to comply with 25A or 30B.
But could we get a better long-term rate? Because we would, your capital costs would be backed out of the equation.
So, if I may, you'd buy it and then you wouldn't have a rate. You'd just have.
You'd own the system.
You would
You'd
just
own
be
it.
buying
Right.
you'd be consuming the energy and doing the same thing, but you would be getting an invoice from us every month.
But you would.
And over time, over 20 years, it'd probably come out better to own it. It'd probably take about 15 to 18 years to get your money back.
Do you
on
do
the
it?
investment.
Have you done any of those that way?
We've done 100 power purchase agreements. Harvard University buys theirs, about 16 of them so far.
We have more money than they do. That's a joke.
That's not that genetic rate. Nobody ever buys them. No publics ever buy them. We've seen some purchased over time, but do we have a public who bought one? I don't think we've done a public. We've done 500 commercial projects in the last 10 years.
Just from the, we can have that conversation sort of at another time, but that's just, it sounds like the incentive really becomes very profitable for you after about 12 or 13 years?
Well, I would say this, that there's a cost containment and an earnings cap based on, that we have to comply with on the procurement.
Yeah.
We don't, if you want to buy something, that sounds great to us. That would be up to you if you want to fund this. This project will probably cost $750,000. So if you want to buy it, go to bid, go through that process and try to get a deal. That way you wouldn't have a payment, but you'd have to come up with the cash or service it.
The cost of knowing that and that unit of conversation is one that is important, I think, to us, not just for this, from the highway garage standpoint, but we have 3 projects, roof-specific projects at the region that this type of thing is going to be a unit of conversation of. And I think it would be a really important thing for us to have that and maybe have you give us that type of proposal for middle school and high school.
And so we've met with them, and they came to you last spring, last winter,
Right,
pre-budget,
Yeah.
and it was, no, we're not so, I'm trying to think of the gentleman who maintains the building.
Ralph Kelly.
Ralph really wants new roofs, he's sick of moving around buckets, but there wasn't appetite to fund new roofs in order to then get into a solar array on the roof at either building last year.
Correct.
So we're happy to
So
help
they-
you look at that.
Right, so they deferred the roof repairs and,
They did, and
Right.
it could use replacement, but it's a pretty expensive
Right.
investment for the
Right.
roofs. But,
right,
so the idea, sometimes folks will either go to MSBA or fund it separately to get the repairs or new roof done.
Right.
And I don't know it's the number, but it's a heavy 6-figure number for the roof. And then the system on top of it would be another similarly large investment. But the conversation with the district was to, here's what it would look like your savings for a solar PPA under this procurement, under our program at those schools. Could that savings help you offset the cost that you'd have to pay yourself back or service the commercial debt to repair the work,
And-
pay for the repair work?
and
And
they
that
also-
didn't go forward. They brought it to both communities and
right,
it wasn't approved to move forward during kind of the, right about this time last year.
right. But the other thing is the district already
District.
gets 40% of their power from the solar array over at Hale
Right.
Reservation.
Yeah.
So we entered into a net metering
Yeah.
arrangement, so there's a 20-year contract out there
Terrific.
for that.
Congratulations, I think it's great.
So what was interesting about that project is it was a community-based project, and it actually, there was a waiting list because there was so much interest in the community to so-called purchase the power or participate in it.
Yeah, I think it's great.
So there is demand in this community
I think so, too.
for additional community-based solar programs.
The district administration was very interested in it. It was
Right.
just a matter of if the communities would accelerate the funding for roofs that aren't performing to their scheduled life.
Right.
And so we said, and I see them right at the superintendent's conference and the NASBO, et cetera. We'll be at MMA in a couple of weeks. Maybe all you folks.
We took on an
Select-
initiative,
Sure.
and just to sort of to square the circle, we took on an initiative here at this group a couple of years ago to set out goals and objectives that are compatible with both our long-term financial position and our long-term goals of capital needs, capital analysis, as they relate to the green community initiatives. So we're trying to bring all these units together in a comprehensive manner so we can do a very accurate, well, as accurate as possible, long-term projection from a financing standpoint. We've worked very, very hard to get ourselves into a very strong financial position so we can make these decisions a little bit easier that affect these different bodies over a long period of time. So just as you described with the roof conversation, that conversation can go a lot easier if this is put in the context of we're looking at this from a 30-year perspective, not an 8-year perspective, or a 10-year perspective, so I think that's how we would like to see the progress or the progression of this conversation. Not only for our highway garage, but as how it could impact our purchasing across the town and the district.
Bob, with respect to your process, we're happy to help you along the way. We do have an opportunity today at that building to save a bunch of money with no money out of pocket, and it does save a lot of money over time. It's a matter of if it's something that the board would like to proceed with.
So I do have a question, because we did spend some time talking about how the region decided to defer any solar program because of the life of their roofs. So the statement was made that our roof is in good shape. So how much is the future life of the roof, does the future life of the roof coincide with the life of the solar panels? Because I'm assuming the solar panels have about a 20-year life, 25-year?
Yeah, the 25-year warranty, yeah.
Right. And then and just to take my question one step further, so during the time, if there were unexpected issues with the roof, can you remove sections of the solar panels and do the repairs to the roof that you need to be able to do? So if you could just address that.
You almost have to think of like a solar system, like a Lego set.
Right.
You know, it sounds silly, but it is. And there's so many panels per string, so many strings go into an inverter. You can turn them off and, lift things up to do repairs if you do need to do them. The nice thing with your roof is that it's a metal, tilted metal raised seam roof. And it's not like a flat roof rubber membrane that, only has like a 20-year warranty.
Right.
And it's a much better roof to work on. So that's why it looks ideal. So we would also do a structural analysis, as we said earlier, before we do anything. So that's crucial. We don't want to do anything that's not right.
So is this a project that if we were to give you the go-ahead, is this something that you would envision doing this spring? Or
we would love to get going as soon as possible because of the way the blocks drop. Right now we're in block 3. In that the interconnect application, sorry because I use acronyms, but the interconnect application process takes about 55 days, to go through. So the sooner we can get that rolling, the better.
So Chris, would this be considered from the town perspective? Because this is one of the little hiccups we ran into with the hail one, and why the region gets the power and we don't. Because it was really a utility contract that we were entering into for 20 years. And to do that, we had to get town meeting approval, and we had to pull the trigger before town meeting. And
so that's correct. This project would have to go before town meeting for both the 20-year lease as well as the pilot agreement. But we wanted to bring this before you this evening as we have a placeholder there, and it's just simply a placeholder, but again, we wanted to brief the board this evening and get a sense of if there's interest in moving forward as it relates to a solar project at the highway garage, and that allows us to then take the next steps and do the next due diligence to work toward what that may look like. But again, this is that introductory conversation for you to get a sense of the board's direction on this project.
so my opinion is that it would be something that we should definitely take to the next level of due diligence. As a green community, what we're trying to do, or our goal is to try and reduce our carbon footprint. It was a little disappointing to us as a community that after all the time and work we spent on Hale Reservation, we are getting 50% of the benefits, so I'm glad we were able to get the power sold to the region. But it really generated a lot of excitement in the community, and the fact that it was oversold really demonstrates to me that this is something that our community at large is interested in. So I would certainly be very excited about taking this, through the next steps.
how do either of you feel?
I agree. I think that this is a conversation that we are long overdue having with regards to exactly what we were talking about earlier. This is a project that could be used in a lot of different phases of the town. And unfortunately, as Madam Chair points out, the process does take a while. We're 100 days, from town meeting, so.
So if I may just mention it, we've done over 60 under this program, primarily with municipalities and school districts. The steps often are authorized with appropriate, and then we have a template. Your council, we've worked with extensively in other communities. So the contract will be fast. It's been procured and negotiated on behalf of the Power Options members. You're eligible as a public entity. You would need to join Power Options. It's a low-cost membership association. It allows you to gain a lot of energy benefits and access to expertise, advocacy, other vendor programs. You could go solar under this power purchase agreement and lease, and with a pilot, so we know our cost and can pitch in. We would get started. So Brookline just had a town meeting, they all got approved. So
Where are they doing
Fairhaven
theirs?
signed to do. We start the utility process on good faith and expecting that it'll pass. The lease is non-intrusive. It just allows us to construct and maintain the system with notice. But we're only there once a year for preventive maintenance and any break fix, so we're not really, and it's a DPW facility, it's not a school, so it's no quarry process per se.
And as a town, we sort of went through the same process with Hale, and town council was phenomenal. I mean, they were extremely helpful.
I gotta meet
And
those people.
Kevin,
Bat.
Kevin Bat was just
I know
great.
Kevin well.
Right,
We just did 3 in Winchester with Kevin.
Right, well, first of all, he had done many of them, and he was able to introduce us to some consultants that helped us with the diligence that were really good too.
So we would, the proposal that we put out there is we authorize town manager to sign a power purchase agreement contingent upon approval. For
Town
these-
meeting approval.
Town meeting, and that's fine. We'll perform the electrical engineering and apply for the interconnection with the utility. And then they'll come back in a few months and tell us, go ahead and build it. And then you'll vote and say, okay, and we'll get the structural engineering work done. We'll do a pre-construction meeting. That project's only going to take a couple weeks to install. A few weeks, a couple weeks to put the panels, then electricians. And then we wait again for the utility for however long it takes to turn it on. It takes usually a couple months for them to get around to swapping out meters and turning things on.
So how does this fit within the energy reduction plan that we put together in 2016?
It reduces our consumption.
No, I know it does, but I mean, in terms of, from my point of view, it's I would like to take a pretty strategic approach when it comes to energy reduction and all other sustainability issues. It seems to me that stuff's coming at us pretty fast and pretty furious. Whether or not you believe in climate change, I certainly see accelerating change in the neighborhood. And so when you're talking about the highway department, it's a one-off. I'm not uncomfortable with the idea, but I would be much more comfortable if there was, here's the plan for the 7 or 8 public buildings that we have in town. And we're going to march through this in a particular way, boom, 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 boom. And so we talked about the region, and there's the regions that sells legal energy, but we have the Chickering School.
Yeah, I actually did look at the electric bill for Chickering School. It's huge.
Yeah, so you have
But
two.
they have the same roof issue, because I have talked to the school administration.
And they have high demand charges there. Which
Right.
One thing we didn't touch on, we do solar, but we also do battery storage. And battery storage is where you can help to reduce that demand
Right,
charge.
right.
It's something like 75% of that to reduce that bill.
So you come back to, from sitting here on the board looking at the town, right? I'm looking for a plan for the town. How do we address energy? What do we do with electric vehicles as they come online?
what do we do with resources, whether it be water, forest, whatever. And it seems to me these things are all connected, really. And I don't think we can do everything at once. It's sort of like a technology upgrade, it's a 5-year plan. But before I take the first step, I'd like to have some assurance that the first step is going to take us where we want to go, and not just be a one-off.
Well, I think this evening, we're just doing more diligence. B, I believe it was the mission of capital budgets as we passed the baton from when we got Green Communities Act to be approved, that every time there is a big building project, to look and see what we can do with respect to reducing the carbon, our energy consumption. Case in point, the roof needs to be replaced on the Protective Agencies building, and we actually went through the process. Carl went through the process. That is not a good roof for many reasons.
And
but
the library doesn't look like it either.
Right, but that's that's why we felt capital budget was a great vehicle to begin to make a dent in the energy consumption, because that's where the large capital projects go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the catalyst for them. So,
I was there when we did this.
right, so I'm just reminding you.
But just as it relates to town buildings, non-school, the highway garage, all buildings have been assessed, and the highway garage is the only viable building for roof-mounted solar in the community.
Yeah, this one's ready, the incentives are good.
ready.
We always think, let's do energy efficiency measures as thoroughly as we can and then look at generation.
Right.
But let's also bear in mind that as the incentives are moving, let's grab what we can that help us achieve, at least directionally what we're trying to do. And if it's a good business choice, while the opportunity is there, we encourage you to strongly consider it. And we'll be happy to help you, or Gino, or staff, or board evaluate what makes sense. We'll continue to work with the district or the region, as you refer to help them with their, energy plan, and to try to even lead by example, especially I think at the schools, for the community to use renewables.
So what you're looking for us to do this evening is you're looking for a thumbs up, thumbs down to move forward pursuing this project?
I'm looking for an indication from the board of empowering the staff to move forward with a solar project at the highway garage.
Okay, so I vote yes. Bob, John?
What does that mean?
It doesn't mean we will. It's just now that
They're
I can
gonna
walk
do the
away and walk with
diligence.
staff, that we know that the time we spent investigating a potential project,
Yeah,
it allows us to investigate the potential of the project beyond this presentation this
Right.
evening.
Okay.
So it's to do due diligence,
Yeah.
extensive
Well, they have a
diligence.
track record. They've been
Right.
doing this for a while, so we
Right.
want to be able to get a really good sense of reputation and issues covered, not covered, et cetera, et cetera. We also should have a way of explaining this, the mechanisms and why we go through, what is it called, power options, what their role is in the process, how the funding, how the finances work, so that when we go to town meeting, or if we go to town meeting, we could be very clear about the various moving parts in the process. Yeah?
May I ask any questions?
Sure.
When does the warrant for town meeting close?
Yeah, the
2
17th.
weeks.
January.
But we have a placeholder.
We
We've
already-
got placeholders on
Okay,
there.
all right, terrific.
Yeah, we're set up.
Checking on that.
So the solar panels will be personal property and they'll be subject to taxes, so would you be looking also to enter into a tax arrangement where you amortize the taxes over the life
Yep.
of the, so I can't remember if we need a placeholder on the warrant for that.
For the pilot.
The pilot
The
covers it.
pilot.
Yep, and we have that.
Okay.
The only thing that I would add to that is the options part. I'd like to see what other options we could.
Well, that's part of the diligence.
Right.
Right.
So solar, is the building's ready, the garage makes perfect sense, logical place. You're taking you're taking advantage of something that is literally underutilized, low-hanging fruit, if you will. So the other buildings are, as we've all heard us say individually, we're very much interested in options for the new project in Carroll, the middle school and the high school.
Well, I would think that would be all part of the design,
Part of the
right,
town.
right.
I mean, to your point, Selectman Jeffries, I mean, do you want to look at carports, where, what's the extent of the, the due diligence of what solar options potentially look like in the community?
So Gino, I bet you have a pretty good idea of what you would like to see and from a planning standpoint about what that would encompass. So I'd defer that to you. I would say you sort of use your guidance and your judgment, and with Chris come together for a plan, if you will, of these are the items.
Yeah, for sure. Carport's great, but unless you want to build a carport anyway, I mean, it's a much more expensive way to do it. But on the other hand, when you have a humongous parking lot, it's wide open, and the sun beats down on it, and then your car gets 130 degrees inside, it has that double benefit of providing shade and extending the pavement life while also producing. And so, it has trade-offs.
Gino, one thing that I'd like to think about, as I'm sure Bob was going to bring it up to me at the slide right before this one. There's 3 buildings off to the left in the slide right before this that you'll see 3 rooftops. If you happen to own those 3 houses, would you say that those would be a good use of solar for those roofs, based on what you see in that position right there?
Too small, John. Too small, only 3 kilowatts on those houses.
Somebody's had that conversation.
Maybe an extension cord?
We should ask if they're going to reflect into your windows.
Exactly. What exactly
I
does
better not see any orange power cords going up the hill, that's all.
So Chris, the deliverable will be just a more comprehensive.
That's right, there's no
package
commitment,
of
it's
what-
just so that I know
of
that I can
what-
have
of what-
the
of what
staff
it would
move
look
forward.
like.
That's correct.
Right,
Yep.
okay.
Who's going to work on that, Chris? You and?
Gino, myself, Carl, and Craig.
Do you need a formal yes, yes, yes?
We did.
I think we gave it to him.
We did, yes,
already.
yes, yes.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, I
Thanks for
appreciate
you
it.
guys.
And Gino and members of Capital, thank you. Planning, thank you. Very good step,
All right,
really in the right direction.
thank you so much.
Thanks. Carl, I don't think you can sit back there anymore.
Front and center, my friend, front and center.
Madam Chair, if I may, as our building superintendent approaches the bench,
It's at the stockade.
that would be good.
Yeah.
I would just ask that we remove, or we're not prepared at this point to discuss the space needs assessment.
Okay.
We had teed it up for this evening, but Carl is waiting on some final documentation from a final vendor
That's
to
okay.
move forward. So we'll move it to the next meeting, yeah.
I welcome that deletion on this evening's agenda.
Gets us back on track, right?
Right, it gets us back on track, so thank you. So then we're going to move to item 1.6, which is the appointment of the
It's
deputy
still Carl.
border systems operator. It's
about
still
this-
Carl, but it's a different task
about the
that's
space
before
needs?
him.
I'm here for the water department.
Right. He's wearing the other hat, do you not see it?
So, I'm requesting that David Candias, he gave his resignation. He's my backup water operator or deputy. And I found another person, Joshua DeSantos, that was willing to step up to his place.
So is this the Colonial Water
Yes.
technician?
Yeah.
Okay. Was David Candias, was he affiliated with?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes. David lives further away.
right.
and he's in Plymouth a lot. The lead time, you're supposed to be here within an hour.
And he can't
That's
always get
closer.
here, right. And I think Josh is much
Josh
closer.
lives in Framingham,
Right.
so,
So he doesn't have to deal with Route 3?
no. And he was willing to step up and do it. So I would recommend or ask the board to deputize him. I guess
Okay.
that's the correct word.
So I have no questions or
Do you have
conversation.
questions?
I
You're
move
the right guy for
to
the...
appoint
Yeah, okay.
Joshua DeSantis as the town's deputy water systems operator to fill the unexpired term of David DeCandis, which ends June 30, 2021.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Okay.
Aye. Are you still up?
No,
Or are you done?
Mr. Dwelly is up now.
Carl, you can take this, my friend, if you'd like.
I'll stay.
Yeah.
Look
Gives
at
you
that,
any
he's
questions.
staying to help you out, to support you. As long as you lean back, you're good.
This is like a repeat.
Do you want us to close the door, or? Okay, there's nobody out there.
Okay, I'll say that I like the picture of the red bow on the lamp. Very nice. Mona, is that you?
Thank you very much. Actually, I will give a shout out to, Mr. Dave Stapleton.
Oh, yeah.
So as we think about our projects here, about redoing the website, developing materials that reflect the community, we had a conversation about pictures that he takes around the community, and I asked him to send me over a couple, and he sent over
Well done.
about 24 really nice photos that we now have in our repertoire that we can use for all sorts of things, a website, presentation. So, Dave, if you're out there and you're watching, thank you.
Well done.
When
So-
was this taken? Do we know the year?
Not this Christmas, not this
Well, it could
winter.
have been,
Could've been
because
before.
before Christmas, we
2
had,
weeks before
we had a
Christmas.
bunch,
Yeah,
it
but
was
that looks like
white.
real snow. We had, it was like slush and...
No, but it still looked like that. It was really pretty.
So I wanted to present this evening to the board a mid-year update or 6-month update on our progress towards the board's goals for FY '20. And I'll jump right in. So as you'll recall, the board had 4 main goals around modernization, financial planning, community inclusion, and town governance. Under each of those goals, we worked together to develop specific focus areas that helped us accomplish those goals, and you'll see those all listed on this summary slide here. I wanted to provide you with a general overview, and I'll get into detail of each goal and the steps that we are at, but I wanted to provide you and the community with a quick overview of the status. So if you look at the far right column there, anything in dark green I consider complete at this point. Anything in light green is in progress with an anticipated completion for this fiscal year. And anything in red is a project that I anticipate will not be completed for this fiscal year.
That's John's project, right? He's running late?
If Selectman Spring, if I'm able to place blame on Selectman Jeffries, sure. If he can be our fall guy.
How was he mentioned that one last year? I mean, I don't know what's going on here. But it's nice red and green colors.
Yeah, and it gives you kind of a nice, I think, summary, right,
Right, I
of
like
where
it.
we're at, right, 6
Right.
months in. So
Sorry, John.
let's jump into to each area. So this is very similar to the 2 or 3 month update that I provided a few months ago. What I did was I cleaned up some of the accomplishments and the next steps, and I just wanted to very quickly and at a high level summarize those for the board
Don't lose those accomplishments.
this evening. Oh, I got files. So the first, on onboarding the Assistant Town Administrator and Municipal Project Manager, our Assistant Town Administrator is sitting right here. So that's a great accomplishment. One of the things that
And she lasted
that,
almost
that
a
we've
week.
mentioned. Watch out, the week is not over yet.
She's still here even after you gave that 3-volume set of duties to do. Yeah, tasks.
And she's laughing.
On her first day, too.
On her first day,
On her
yeah.
first
Nice
day.
job.
Yep. Wait till she sees all these. But it's,
Mona, she can't get out, right?
That's why Mona's there.
but thank you for the board's great introduction this evening. We're really excited to have Kate on board. She made it through 77 applicants for the position, which is really remarkable, and she's a great addition here to our team. The municipal project manager position closed yesterday, so we'll begin the recruitment process in the next few weeks, very similar to the recruitment process that we followed for the assistant town administrator. So that'll be underway soon, and we hope to onboard that position in late February. So we didn't get as many applicants as we did for the assistant town administrator, but we've got some, from a cursory glance, in my own opinion, got some good candidates in there. So we'll take them through the process and see where we end up. Our second focus area is around technology strategic reviews and backup staffing. Two really great things that have been accomplished this year and that have been accomplished via the tab. One is our IT infrastructure assessment that has been completed and has been presented to the tab last month. And what that did, as a reminder for folks, is to really assess everything from our phones to our desktop computers to our software to how we communicate information out. And we got a lot of really great recommendations back from that. In addition, we implemented cybersecurity protections to safeguard our data and hardware and software. I'm sure as many of you know, you see communities out there who get hit regularly by hackers, given the fact that municipalities typically don't have the resources to protect their infrastructure as a lot of private companies, so they're easy targets. I'm happy to say that we've put the protections in place to make sure that we are safe and secure. In terms of next steps for this, I'm in the process right now of finalizing the scope of work for our second phase of work. The second phase of work came from the IT infrastructure, and what that really is performance and infrastructure enhancements. So that is making sure that all of our computers are essentially connected to one network, so that if system upgrades need to be implemented, they can be implemented from one central location instead of having our IT staff actually manually go around to individual desktop stations to update computers. The same with putting our printers on a network so that everything is secure, connected, and much more efficient.
So that may save some time.
It absolutely will save
just a little bit of
just
time.
a little bit of time.
Right.
Even bigger than a little bit.
Same thing with updates and controls. Just make sure that our versioning is correct. Everybody's on the same version of our Microsoft Office suite, has the latest cybersecurity. It just automatically occurs instead of being a manual process as it is
Is that
presently.
something that Diana can just log into? Is that like a dashboard that will give her sort of just?
It's actually, so it's scheduling. So Microsoft, for example, will push out patches to their Microsoft Office suite. So your Microsoft Word and your Microsoft PowerPoint. And what she does is she'll essentially receive notification that that's going to come out. And it's an automatic push. There's no more that you're going to go to each computer to make sure that those are manually getting pushed through. We presently, which came out of the IT infrastructure, we've got people on versions of Windows 7 and Microsoft Office, I want to say like 2000. I mean, that have not been supported for a long time. And that contributes to the slowness, right, that people experience at their workstations, and ultimately affects productivity.
Not to mention they can't share things.
Right. So that's really critical. Hardware replacement and capital plan development is another important piece as it relates to our infrastructure here. So there hasn't been in the past a regular plan to update our hardware. You should cyclically rotate through your modems and your viewers, your monitors, less so your phones, but we're going to work on actually developing out a plan. We know which machines need to be updated and replaced, but we're going to go beyond that and actually incorporate, for my friend Barry here, as Chair of Capital Budget, an actual replacement program every 3 to 5 years so that we're constantly moving through this. Keeps our systems upgraded, and there's purchasing power there instead of doing one-offs whenever machines fail.
Right.
So that's really great. Given all the great work that's been done, you'll see on this second piece here, I'm working with Retrofit, who's the vendor doing this work. I'm going to have them come in to present to you everything they've done so far and to highlight those recommendations in the plan moving forward.
You're going to do that at the 22nd, or are you going to go into February?
I'm not sure. I haven't finalized the scope of work with them yet.
So probably February.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then the next piece is, dialoguing with neighboring communities on flexible, on-demand support. There's still a question out here. We're doing all this great work. We have one person dedicated, focused on IT. We're a small community. How do we complement our staff in a way that's cost-effective and sustainable? So I've been having conversations with some neighboring communities. I'll actually be in Millis next week to have a conversation about potential partnerships. I'm meeting with Norfolk County about what they may offer next week as well. So we're working through and having dialogue with folks on how we can really put this at the highest level in the most cost-effective way.
Right, because as we've talked over, the last couple of months, it's just not plausible. It doesn't make sense to have one person support the town because that person could get sick. That person could need support some days because there would just be too much work for that person. So it really makes sense to have somebody else, have a backup.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Police do that. They have, they back up each other. Fire and ambulance too, so it's sort of that kind of model.
Like a mutual aid.
Yeah, mutual aid model, yeah.
Mutual IT aid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Help, I've been hacked.
The next goal is around the website. So we've essentially worked through and identified the direction that we want to head moving forward. So we're working that out with the appropriate entities to make that happen. And we anticipate having something new to see from the community's perspective in about 3 months' time.
Late spring, right?
What's that?
Late spring.
Yes. Yep. The next is around a communication policy. So we've talked about the development of social media accounts in the past, which has been done. Some of the other things that we're focusing on moving forward, and this is really where Kate comes in here in her focus area, both in terms of the responsibilities of the position, but her background that she brings with her, is to really develop out what a robust communications plan and policy looks like, connecting all of our avenues, like a new website, with traditional media, with Dover Sherburne Cable TV, all of our avenues, again, to communicate out to folks. In terms of long-term financial planning, planning for a capital stabilization fund. So we have on-site,
Insight.
on-site.
On-site,
No, it's
insight.
on-site insight,
On-site
right? Not
insight.
insight, on-site.
I always get the site wrong. I always spell it the wrong way.
They'll begin their work on a facilities assessment next week. They hope to have that done within about 4 weeks' time. So that information, coupled with a lot of the good work that our building superintendent is doing, will really give us a 1 to 15 to 20-year overview of what we're looking at in terms of potential capital facility cost moving forward. And that'll really be a really great thing for not only capital budget to look at from a long-range perspective, but also the broader community, the Board of Selectmen, and the Warrant Committee from a financial standpoint to start to fill in the pieces, because as you know, it's not just capital in front of us, right? We've got a lot of other big projects ahead of us, and you want to fit these pieces very much as Selectman Jeffries talked about this evening.
He still has the red mark, though.
Give me the one thing that cannot be done.
Sorry, Chris.
Speaking of,
I'll be good.
No, the feedback and is appreciated. Speaking of big ticket items, unfunded liabilities such as OPEB is a big one. Our treasurer collector has submitted and compiled all the necessary information, really all around personnel matters, for our actuary to be able to update what our liability and what our funding schedule looks like, so that's another leg of our financial stool, so to speak, so that we can put it all together. Free cash policy. We just kicked off the engagement, as you'll recall, with the Collins Center out of UMass Boston to begin this work around financial policies. Much to my chagrin, they actually go well beyond reserve policies such as free cash, unfunded liabilities, one-time revenues, and they actually also will develop for us internal policies on our day-to-day financial operations. So the day-to-day work, like cash reconciliation between departments, the accountant and the treasurer, they'll put policies all around that, put policies in place. So I'll be in touch with the chair on identifying stakeholders. My plan moving forward is to run 2 parallel tracks. One is with our stakeholders on developing out those reserve policies around free cash, general stabilization, capital stabilization, your very forward-facing, broad-based financial policies with the chair or designee, a designee from the capital budget committee, a designee from warrant, anyone else you may decide. And at the same time, we'll also work with the internal group to work out what those internal policies will be. And at the end, we'll have everything laid out that we can vote upon collectively to move forward. And these 3 things, the OPEB capital and the financial policies, I am pushing as hard as I can to make sure that we have this all ready for town meeting if the board so decides and our stakeholders so decide to present something this year. I do have I have placeholders in place in anticipation of that.
Okay.
You saw the really wonderful presentation this evening from Janet and Amy, who did a really great job on that work. It was really enjoyable working with them, to not only identify and highlight what the community presently offers, but what we can potentially offer moving forward. And if I just may add, it was discussed, but as you talk about, it was a great point about, some of the things that we offer right now, it's really difficult for folks to actually be able to qualify. And that's why the team really wanted to highlight the check the box, because of this, instead of the state setting a threshold, the municipality can set the threshold and determine who it is receives these benefits. So it's unique things like that we're able to actually provide services maybe to a broader population. So thank you, Garris, for this evening.
Well, what their presentation highlighted was the opportunities that are out there for us to explore as a community.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. On an open space fund, so this is the area, you'll see some green here. Some of the things that we've been doing, it's somewhat related to, an open space fund, but it doesn't directly give you, here's our plan for developing an open space fund. As I've been here now for 6 months and I've had conversations around this and sat with stakeholders and discussed the opportunities, my recommendation to the board is that if you are, there's 2 schools of thought here. One is you appropriate or you set aside a bunch of money for open space, but one of the things that I've heard is that we don't necessarily know what that open space is right now, and that may be a tough sell to the community on, let's slug away $5 or $10 million. I don't know, but that's some of the things that we've heard and
But
some of the things that
trust us, you'll
Selectman
use it in
Jeffries
some type.
has. Yeah.
Didn't you just buy a big house?
Yeah, yes.
So one of the vehicles, though, that can get you there is the CPA, or the Community Preservation Act, where it not only sets up pools of money around open space, as well as recreation and historical preservation, but you have the added benefit of a state match. So, this shouldn't fool anyone. The CPA is an additional tax, but it sets up a vehicle for you, and you get the added benefit of state funds. While the match isn't that great, around 20 to 30%, it's 20 to 30%.
So that needs to be fleshed out.
Right, but one of the things, Mr. Dwell, the Chris and I talked about was, the town did explore the CPA, I think about 15 years ago, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go back and look at it and see if today maybe it makes sense for the town. We need to constantly look at these things. Back then, we didn't know a lot about it. In hindsight, maybe we would have been better off adopting it then because the match was much higher. But it didn't, it didn't make sense to the town, and it may not make sense to the town again.
That's absolutely
But
right.
that doesn't mean that we shouldn't explore it and present it as an option. Because that is our responsibility here, to see what's out there and available, and then let the citizens decide if that's something that
At
fits.
Open Space last night, the Open Space Committee meeting last night, we talked about this. Now 64% of the towns in the Commonwealth are now covered under the CPA.
Yeah.
Right.
And such a large number. And to Robin's point, having had that conversation, that there's no reason not to go back.
Yeah.
But the two big items, the hail and open space, with the amount of land, just the pure acreage of land covered under hail and open space, those are the two initiatives where a warrant article, there are going to be spaces for warrant articles this year. Whether they decide to move forward on both of these items, or whether either of them are moved to the town meeting, yet to be determined. But the progress is being made. There are so many moving parts to these. We're constantly trying to focus and narrow and
Absolutely.
keep the focus so it's manageable.
Right. And that's really it, right? CPA, that, it's all really just recommendations, right, for the community to consider, right? Here are options to get you here, and then, policymakers in the community make those decisions.
It's our job to identify
Absolutely.
what's out there, to
Right.
identify things that we believe are critical to the community.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, it's not for us, the
Yep.
three of us, to decide. It's for the community at large to decide what's important to them.
So it goes back to the, you constantly need to look at what you guys constantly look at what you're doing, how you're doing it. Events change,
Right.
and so
Circumstances change.
Circumstances change. The real challenge on a lot of this kind of work is really being able to communicate and educate. I wasn't around when I don't remember the work around the Community Preservation Act in the past. But I mean, there have been several instances where things that hadn't passed were given a second look. The police.
But you have to, just because you're looking at it doesn't mean that you're gonna do it.
Right.
But it would not, you're not looking out for the best interest of the town. If you don't look at it, don't bury your head in the sand. Just because it didn't work 5 years ago doesn't mean it's not gonna work now.
And then it comes down to how it's communicated, how you educate people.
Right, and maybe
so that
you
they're fully
understand it better.
Yeah,
Right.
and so they're fully informed.
Right, and potentially the CPA, and I don't recall, I remember there being some very good conversation at town meeting about it, and I think the vote was quite close, but maybe it wasn't effectively communicated, maybe we didn't understand it enough or figure out how it would be good for Dover. You just don't know.
So to that point, that's a great segue. Page 3 of Kate's
17 pages.
detailed
Page 3 of volume 1.
17-page to-do list.
work plan is to actually develop out a whole presentation around CPA, everything from how it
Yeah.
works,
Oh,
who's
that's great.
involved,
Yeah.
how it can be done, and we'll get that on an upcoming schedule. And again, this isn't anything that we're trying to rush, but that's it's a very important point about ensuring that we are educating decision makers appropriately.
Yep.
And so that'll be before you at some point in the future.
I can even go through some of my files and see if I can find
Look at that.
anything.
Kate, you
that-
might not even have to.
Right, right.
That's a bad idea, Kate. There's a lot
because
of
it
notes
would-
in the margins.
No, but and there's some, I think Carol Lisbon was part of it as well, but it might be good just to dig through and figure out what the opposition was, why, if we can even find it. Carol's files may be better than mine.
Was this in digital form or calligraphy?
Everything
glad-
I have is scanned in, so.
Chris, I'm glad Mr. Spring had said he didn't remember back to the community preservation, because I thought he was going to say, I don't remember back to when Ben Franklin actually wrote something.
But I do know the penny problem.
Oh, my God.
So, moving to community inclusion, there's a focus there around responding to citizen issues in a timely manner. And there's a few things that we can do, and there's a few things that we have done. But this is very much a continuous goal, right? It's something that we always want to achieve, and it's something that we always want to strive for. So there's a few things, and I mentioned this last time, we've added a few since then, is that, we're communicating and sending out guidance to staff on how to set up an out-of-office when you're away, so that people don't email your account and they don't know that you're out for a week or two sunning down in the Caribbean. Simple things like putting up a piece of paper on your door. We've got departments that are filled by 1 or 2 staff members, and it's not unique that both are out at one time. And so even just having notification on your door that you're out, here's who you can email, or here's who you can go see in the building to get your question answered, your problem solved, as well as simple reminders and trainings about the importance of even acknowledgments of receiving an email. You may not know the answer, you may not be able to get the work done when you receive the email, but it's important to acknowledge for folks that you have received it and that you'll get back to them in some certain time frame. So all of this has been, it's a continued part of our dialogue as we meet as a team on a bi-weekly basis, and will continue to be so. A few other things that are important to this, that are very important to convey are, very much of the staffing that we talked about during the budget presentation. A lot of that will go a long way. I use the example, if passed, I use the example of our building department. Well, our building inspector, half of the week is the only individual in the office. Half of his time during the week is spent off-site doing inspections. There's a problem there, right? And so if we're able to provide full-time staff coverage down there, well, now we got improved customer service because we're able to provide that.
So in a past life, one of the really key things on customer response is make sure you achieve closure.
Mm-hmm.
And that often people do something, respond, send an answer, and they think it's closed from their perspective.
Yeah.
But unless you get some sort of, oh yeah, thank you very much,
Right.
you do want to make sure that you get closure on these things.
Absolutely. Yep. And there's other things that we'll be able to leverage once the website is up, and with Kate on board and with the municipal project manager about even just outlining, office hours, who to contact for various things that are available on the website that people can go and see. So all that
You can just send them
contributes
to Amy. She says she's
customer
here all the
service.
time.
That's it. All right.
Or Jerry.
I'm going to add that. So when I come back for the next update, Amy will be maybe an accomplishment. We'll target that. And then the last goal is around the town's operational structure. And we talk about staffing, we talk about light staffing in departments, and the very flat structure that we have here. So a couple of really great things. You saw the COA and the assessor's office working collaboratively on the senior tax relief. We've developed a finance team that now meets regularly to not only work through some of our critical mandatory state reporting, like setting the tax rate, but also just to make sure that we're on the same page on a regular basis about the day-to-day operations, as well as broader level goals around budget development and report development. So that helps keep everyone in sync and on the same page. I met with a team of staff today to finalize a draft proposal as folks talk about a conceptual DPW. We are in the final stages of wrapping that up, and then we'll then have conversations with the decision makers to present those policies and work that through there. Our proposal at this point is I think, a really strong one. It'll provide some cohesiveness It's very much how a few of these entities already operate, and it'll provide us with some cost savings opportunities, not from a people standpoint, not to scare anyone, but from an equipment standpoint, which is really fantastic. And then I talked about earlier about hiring key staff positions, which goes back to the budget presentation. And then a couple of other things that we're looking for. You know, we don't want to just stop with finance or DPW. There are other opportunities for us to look at, but I know the board's focus this year was really on the finance team, as well as, the DPW, and then we've been working from there. So that is what turned out to be a little bit longer of an overview of the board's goals. There's a few other things that I just want to highlight for you this evening. As a real kudos to the staff and the team here, really, and everyone in the community who's all working toward these great things. So the board highlighted your goals, but there's so much in addition that's going on that are goal related, that aren't one-time things. I won't go through all of these, but we've talked about classification and compensation and personnel rules and regulations. That has come up regularly. That work will be starting in the next week or so. Solar opportunities, you heard this evening. Space needs assessment, you kind of heard this evening.
It was on the agenda.
Yeah, it was on the agenda.
Well, Carl, he looked at the agenda, he said, this is way too much for Robin. She just got back into town. I'm going to do her a favor, right?
Selectman Jeffries talked about with Hale and Selectman Spring on Carroll Community Center. So there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement here in the community. So to recap FY20, to reflect back on my first 6 months here, what I heard from the board and what I heard from the community very much was that, this first year was the focus on the goals was really foundational, right? There were a lot of aspirational things that you wanted to achieve as a community, but there were a lot of foundational things that we needed to put in place to make sure that we could not only get those done, but to continue to build from those. And that's really about doing these assessments and doing these studies so that we can build roadmaps, we can build 5-year plans, we know what our liabilities look like, putting the people in place and in the right place so that we can all work together and move forward. And from my vantage point, I think we've done a really great job, and I can't thank everyone from the board for your vision and your leadership, to the staff, to volunteers for all working as a cohesive unit. I think we've made some really, really tremendous progress this year, and it's great to be a part of. And the last thing that I wanted to leave you with, and I'm sure we'll discuss this more in depth as we get moving forward and closer to the end of the fiscal year, but I did want to highlight a couple of things that at least myself and staff and I took from some of the board's conversations that we've had in the past, things that we want to look forward to potentially next fiscal year. We want to build off of things like the website that I talked about, continue to identify internal processes that can benefit from automation, like having employer self-service so that you don't have to go to the treasurer collector to get a whole benefits packet. It's all online for you to download before you even arrive. Long-term financial planning, we talked about the CPA. In addition, we want to build on all the work that's being done, develop a suite of financial indicators so that we can marry all of our liabilities with things like what is our state aid, what's that looked like the past 15 years, what do we anticipate that looking like for the next 5 years. Like to put together a robust budget book that's not just numbers, but really highlights all these priorities of the community and our projects that shows taxpayers here's what my tax dollars are going toward. The diversification of revenue streams is a very broad-based topic, but I think as you look over the community and the residential tax base that we have here, there's some pressure there. And so conversations around revenue streams, I think, are ones that we'll want to be having moving forward.
Which is also why the presentation that was made this evening on the solar panels,
Absolutely.
Their revenues decrease costs, but programs like that also help decrease our costs over, the next 20 years, which are important as well.
And just a couple of other quick hits. I've been speaking with with Jerry, who was here this evening, and with the planning board, about really getting the master planning process started as the community, addresses and look towards issue around open space preservation, and housing needs and things like that. We want to start that process, I think, earlier. It looks like the master plan should be up in the next 2 years or so, but that's something that we want to kind of start moving toward. There's some things about, including the community and some of the other, town governance I talked about engaging with our partners, the MAPC in the region, and others. So this will certainly be fleshed out as we move along and as we continue to dialogue. But there were a couple of things that I wanted to bookend tonight's presentation with, on some things to potentially build from. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So I would, you can still sit there. So what I would like to say is, when we began this process over the summer, and we started it first with the interim town administrator and then with you, we felt it was important to be able to present to the new town administrator what we felt was important to Dover. And we put together these goals, and I think what we're working towards this year is not only, Chris, you have done a phenomenal job leading us through the accomplishment of these goals. We're also putting a process in place that is something that I hope we'll continue to do forever, because I think it's important for the board to identify what is a priority for the community, and then for us to be measured by how we achieve those goals. So this evening, not only did you make this presentation, but you actually showed us by having the COA and the assessor's office come here that this is now part of the makeup of this townhouse. We never really saw collaboration before. It was silos, nobody knowing what the other silo was doing. So I like to think that having these goals helped contribute towards that, but really it was your leadership that really has brought our goals to life. So we really do appreciate that. And I think once we're finished with the first year, maybe we should begin to document the policy and the procedure, because it's not always going to be the three of us here. It's going to be other people here, so it will be important to document how we went about doing this. And as with everything, continuous improvement.
Okay.
I'm sure they'll find things that we didn't do quite right and find better ways to do them.
There'll be a path.
But that's okay. Yeah. There'll be a path, right? We'll start with the path. When I looked towards going forward next year, the one item that I didn't see on here that I think is really important, and it does kind of leverage off of the website and some of the things we're doing with modernization and computerization, is just having a document retention policy. I know we have boxes and boxes and boxes of documents in the roof, so if we could just put that somewhere on here for 21 to begin to think about that would be great.
Noted, and I hope, I'll probably jinx myself right now, but that is on the project manager, whoever may be out there.
Right.
That is their
that
top.
Would be a perfect,
we hope
right.
to have that done this year.
Right.
But that's a critical need.
Right. If you take a step back, I would say we're 60%, 70% complete for most of our goals for the year. And we did that.
What do you think?
And we did that understaffed.
So that means we could add 5
No,
times the
no,
amount
no,
of
no.
work going into fiscal year 21.
Stop listening at this point
No,
right
we're-
now.
It's logical. And by the way, I know Kate got a 3-volume set of duties. What do we have for the project manager?
The same.
Same?
Yeah, the same.
I'm not sure I'm doing a good job expressing myself, but what pleases me most about all of this is it's not just checking the box. These are ground level process changes that are taking place that, I walk into this townhouse and people are always smiling, and I see people talking to one another, and I see departments talking to one another, and that makes me feel good about what we've been able to accomplish this year.
I appreciate that, thank you. And if I could just build, because it was a very important point, is that we have been able to accomplish all this, not only short-staffed, but we've got some staff who've been dealt with some challenging personal situations this year that have affected operations. And, for the most part, not only have we not skipped a beat of the day-to-day, but I feel like we've made great progress on really proactive things, which I'm very proud of, and, again, can only thank the great team that we have here.
Place I used to work for, we talk about people being their greatest asset.
Right.
Right, and oftentimes it's just an expression. When you work in an organization where that's actually believed and pursued, you can do amazing things. And it is sort of soft, but
Very.
we're people.
Right.
And so it's getting the best out of people is just a wonderful thing, and I'm serious about it. I mean, it's amazing what you can get done. And people work really hard over the last 18 months. Got a lot done, and I think everybody should be very proud, because I certainly am proud of what's been accomplished.
I agree, Chris. This is a great presentation. Great job. It's been a really privilege to watch from our perspective. Somebody start a job, come into something brand new,
And a step up.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a job very well done, and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback, and there's plenty of work still to be accomplished.
And it's the entire staff that has helped make this happen.
Mostly
so.
Mona.
98%.
You didn't get 2 chocolates, John, so.
Seriously,
All right.
Mona.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Moving right along. Boy, this is a full agenda.
It is. I'm hungry.
I am hungry too. We may have to start having dinner here. So the next item of business is to warrant article look-ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in your packets are an updated list of the placeholders for the 2020 warrant. If I may just highlight for you, since we last saw this, there are 5 new additions, starting with number 23, under zoning and planning. The planning board this week voted on 2 items that they'll be presenting to town meeting. One is related to regulations on short-term rentals, and the other is related to amendments for the town's existing accessory dwelling unit regulations. The planning board, and they can speak to this, but the intent there is to provide some additional opportunities for folks as it relates to housing using existing infrastructure. So they consider accessory dwelling units like rooms above a barn or rooms above a garage. So it helps mitigate the need for development, but provides the community with a bit of housing stock. And this is something that I know a lot of councils on aging, or communities and their councils on aging, looking at as we talk about aging in place. This is a great alternative, to move out of, what could be a large house by yourself to maybe a unit in a relative's house or something like that. So those are the 2 from the planning board. The next 2 are 27 and 28 in order, both of which you heard this evening. Again, potentials, the senior property tax exemption deferral rate reduction, and a senior property tax exemption amount increase. And then the last 3 are all related to citizen petitions that we anticipate will come. We do have the petitions out to the petitioners in order. One is a road acceptance at Stagecoach Lane, and then the next 2 relate to school start times.
Do you want me to give a little bit of background here?
Please.
So we have been approached by members of the community, the school committee, which governs school policy, it's not the Board of Selectmen that does that, have approached us asking for counsel on 2 warrant articles that they want to address at town meeting. The one would be for the town to appropriate funds for additional buses. So what the school committee has voted to do is to flip the start times of the middle and high school and with the start times of the elementary school. There have been a lot of studies that have been done over the years that suggest that middle school and high school students are not getting enough sleep, and they would be best served with the days starting later, whereas younger elementary age students are awake earlier, and they are not impacted negatively by their days starting earlier in the day. There have been a number of communities around us that have done this flip, and it's worked well for them. The school committee has looked at this for many, many years. For the last 2 years, I believe they had a task force, and they have made the decision to, starting next year, they will implement this switch. Because our buses are basically regionalized, we have the same buses take the elementary kids to school and the high school and middle school kids to school. We had to do a flip. We can't have everybody start at the same time. That would really increase the cost to us. So this community group in Dover would like the town to consider appropriating additional funds so that we could have an additional bus route starting the same time as it does right now for the Chickering School students. It is important to understand, and Chris and I will meet with the petitioners, and we have talked to legal counsel, but the Board of Selectmen have no jurisdiction over school policy. It is the school committee that has full jurisdiction over school policy, and even if the town votes to appropriate funds under the citizens warrant article, it is up to the school committee to vote to expend those funds. So, citizens have the right to put on the warrant article, and the community can vote, but governance is such that the Board of Selectmen cannot enforce a vote that impacts the schools, because they are independent, and it's governance. It's not a Dover bylaw, it's Mass General Law. It's the way it is. The second article that they would like to put on it is for the town to appropriate funds for a traffic study, to see how this change in start time may impact the traffic in town. Did I get everything right?
Perfect, yep.
Right,
Thank
so
you.
so Chris has done, the woman, the spokesperson for this group reached out to me, and with Chris's help, we have worked with her to educate her and her group of, what the parameters under which they are working. We are helping them with the wording for the warrant article, but we're also making sure that they understand the constraints that exist around a potential positive vote and not a positive outcome for them. So, we've been very proactive. Chris, I really appreciate you stepping in and getting legal counsel to also help us understand the issue. But it is, again, our responsibility and the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen to
assist citizens with what they want to do. It's not necessarily an endorsement of what they're trying to do. So it is a tricky situation.
Yeah, it is. Are we also going to consider a OPEB funding warrant article as we began last year? We have an article for.
Does
to
11,
move.
does 11 not do that?
No.
If I may, 11 would
continue
do
it.
that for the newly established regional
Right.
school stabilization
Right, and we
fund.
already
For
have-
our town's OPEB liability, we already fund the
Right.
ARC.
Right, we already
We
do.
don't need it.
So
We
that's,
don't need it.
that's within the town's operating budget.
Right.
But to Selectman Jeffrey's point, you know, I do have 5 articles from last year grayed out that I intend to remove. But I'd like, you know, there should be a dialogue this evening because this is our
Okay.
last meeting before it closes on whether we want
So
any of these to
11
remain.
should be green.
Right. Well, I
think
believe,
it's up to
but
you
I
guys.
may have misunderstood, but I believe the town treasurer was going to work with the actuary to help us understand what the amount might be for us to do an annual funding. Right,
So the
so-
account
so we should-
exists,
right.
right? We have the stabilization.
The
Right.
account exists, but
So
it
it's
was
just a
my
matter of
understanding that we
putting-
have to make, we'd have to move from
Contribution.
gray to green. And we would have
Yeah,
to,
so if we could turn that from
Numerate.
gray to green.
a dollar amount.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
So we'd ask the town to appropriate X amount of money for the
Right.
OPEB stabilization account.
So we will keep that.
Yeah.
And then you know, everything else grayed out,
Right.
from my standpoint, can go
Right.
unless,
Well, just for fun, if we wanted to bring back rail trail, fun, just to liven up the evening a little bit, make it longer,
I think that'd be a great idea.
it'd probably go over well.
We should try to hit 50 warrants to see how long we
think
can
I-
stay on
I think I feel a migraine coming on that.
One, it should be about 7.
Okay, that was a bad joke.
I don't
I
have
enjoyed
migraines,
it.
but I feel one coming on.
Thank you, this is very well done.
okay. So I will keep 11, 10, 15, 16, and 17 will be removed. And then my last question is around, so you'll notice, you know, things like 19, 20, you know, these things that are, they're
Standard.
essentially, they're baked in, so the reserve fund can be put in, can be voted within the operating budget. You know, it's, nothing changes, it's rolled into one and reduces the number of articles. You know, I don't want to tilt the apple cart if this is what folks are used to, but I just pose that question if there's interest in consolidating some of these. Again, nothing really changes, they're done within an existing article or within a motion.
Right, you know, that might be something after town meeting, and maybe it's a 21 goal that we should look at. Are there other things we can do? Like, for instance, in our agenda?
Consent
The
agenda items.
consent agenda, really, I am a huge fan. So can you apply that same concept to town meeting?
So,
Because, you know, everybody complains town meeting takes too long. And I think the Carroll community, when we had the town meeting for one specific item, we got a lot of people coming to the meeting because they knew they were only gonna be there for 2 hours. So I love the idea, I love the way you're thinking, because it would be great to think about how can we streamline.
Right. The
Are
debate-
there things we can do
There are-
that will slow it down,
There are
and speed it up a little?
There are a specific number of items that are going to generate a specific amount of debate time that we can allocate. And if there was a consent agenda portion that could make, quite literally, 18 or 19 of the items
Go
go away.
Which is probably 45 minutes of town meeting, just because you have to read it, you have to go through it.
So about
So
this
just
time
food
last,
for thought.
I don't know, was this time last year or the year before? Jim Repetti pulled together a group to take a look at how to, tighten up town meeting.
Great.
And it's better
and there
than it
were-
used to be.
There were a host of recommendations that were made.
Procedural.
But most of them were about sort of efficiency. How can we make the town meeting more efficient? And to be fair, that was what we asked them to do. And then, same as Robin, we were talking, and this consent agenda, right, there's just a lot of boilerplate articles or warrants. And just to echo what Robin has said, I mean, it just seems to make sense if we could apply the consent agenda idea to the boilerplate warrant articles, and then we can segment that away, and then the town meeting can focus on the more important items, and that would limit it. And I said, and we just said, yeah, I mean, limited articles where people are interested, you get turnout. We want turnout, and we want discussion. So maybe we should talk to Jim and get him involved and reconstitute that group and start to think a little bit more creatively about how we can make the town meeting model, which goes way back, work in the 21st century. Right? Because people have very different lifestyles than they did in 1600.
Yeah, there's got to be an electronic way of the roll call hold process that you could do electronically. That if there were very specific items that people had questions on, whether it's now that we've gone to the percentage increase year over year, that generates interest and that generates knowledge as to what something may be year over year, and if it's out of whack, why.
Right. So anyway.
For 2020 or 2021?
2021.
Okay.
Well, we would like you
We
to.
could talk with, get it going.
We would like you to experience a town meeting.
I
Oh,
did.
you did one.
did.
Yeah, but that was.
But
that was
specials don't count.
Right. We
Specials
want
don't
you to
count.
experience the real thing.
You were asking me, who's that guy sitting next to me? That's the town administrator.
We had literally
Who's that random
no
guy?
space to breathe because there was a set behind us for the
We'll need to make
stage.
sure that, speaking of efficiencies, that should be addressed.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else on the warrant that, from the board's perspective, you'd like to see?
It sounds like you got the placeholders that we need.
Right.
Clean it up a little bit, and we should be good to go.
Okay.
A couple of great green, that's all. Thank you.
Like established salaries for the selectmen. Could be in a consent agenda.
It's a great idea. That is a great idea.
You can still put hold on it if you want, but.
Throw a couple zeros at the end for you.
Yeah, without the decimal point.
People would prefer zeros in front.
Most legislators, you do.
Yeah, that's 0.099,
Did you realize in most every other legislative body, they pass themselves?
Well, you've tried it 4 years running. I don't know.
Rhonda's trying to.
She's had some.
All right.
Come on, let's go. Let's
Boys,
wrap this up.
boys.
Rail trail.
Mrs. Hunter, let's go. Let's get this done.
All right, so the next. what do we
Selectmen
have?
updates.
Selectmen updates. I do not, I gave my update. I've been working with the community groups and.
Right. Well, maybe at some point we could have them come in,
Okay,
tell us what's going on, maybe in February, March or something like that.
okay.
And the only thing I have for the upcoming agenda is I am probably going to ask the board to appoint members to the building committee at the January 22nd.
That's exciting.
And we're gonna probably follow the same sort of structure that we used for the original Carroll project. So membership, stakeholders, expert pool, that kind of thing.
Okay. Chris, do you have an update, or were your goals basically the update? Did that cover that, or do you want?
Under my own or
Yeah.
under?
Under your own, because I think we did 1.7, we
Yeah.
did 1.8,
Yeah.
we did 1.9.
Yeah, I just have a few that will take
Okay.
one quick, so on the, we talked about retrofit.
No rush.
We talked about website. I like to get back on track. Here's the opportunity to do so. As it relates to Carroll Community Center, the RFQ for an OPM has gone out. There's a lag.
Good process?
There's a very good process, yep. There's a lag in the system that publishes it from the state, so it won't get posted until the 22nd. But we still remain on schedule for our anticipated interviews and selection. So that's out, and now we'll just collect responses. Hill, nothing really new to report other than that we have an upcoming meeting at the end of January. We talked about on-site insight, municipal project manager, and we talked about the financial policy. The only thing I'd add is that the DOR will be on site to begin their work around assessing and evaluating our financial operations. They'll kick things off with meetings with our finance team and the Board of Selectmen chair on Monday, as well as the warrant committee chair
On the 13th.
on the 13th.
Good.
It's on my calendar. I keep
That's
getting
it.
reminders.
Monday the 13th, that's not a bad day, is it? Not a
No.
Monday today?
No,
You sure?
sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
On track.
So we move to C1, huh?
All right, so now it's our favorite part, the consent agenda, which is the approval of the 2020 mileage reimbursement rate, which is set by the IRS. And then there's special licenses for January 3rd, 21st, 30th, and February 5th. So I make a motion to accept the consent agenda as described,
Seconded.
as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done, right?
Okay,
No,
done.
come on, we got it, we have 5 minutes, what do you want to do before we have to adjourn?
Should we see if Kate can sing?
She tells me, yes. And I offered to do a duet the other day. She ran away.
Kate, how long is the commute?
Just under an hour.
It's a long ride.
Listen to a lot of podcasts.
Right, I love Audible books. And podcasts are good because you can learn, you can, right, while you drive.
Okay.
If I were really honest, I would also tell you that I do a lot of conference calls.
Lots of driving and
While
talking.
I'm in my car. All right, well, if there's nothing more, I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.